It's such a pleasure to be surrounded and be a part of this great panel with you chefs. I just want to tell you, everyone, first how I was drawn to whole food plant-based nutrition. And it was through Leanna a few years ago. There was a monthly meetup that I found on Facebook, and it was also a potluck with different guest speakers that would show up each month. And that's when I learned about whole food plant-based. Before I was a vegan and vegetarian and had no idea what whole food plant-based cooking was all about. So thank you to Plant Power Metro New York for that, and glad to be here. So with that all being said, I would love to introduce our chefs and invite the audience members to please post questions in the comments. We've got some questions here that we're going to go over, but if you have any other ones, we would love to bring them up if we have time later on in the interview. So ladies, we'll start with Chef Brandy Cochran, who helps people take the guesswork out of eating simple, nutritious, and delicious food. When she's not leading a demo for Plant Powered Metro, she leads a small business called Entrepreneur Meal Plan, providing a space for leaders to connect, share resources, and have real talk about what it means to be well-rounded business people. Chef Brandy, welcome.
Thank you.
We also have Chef Rebecca Johnson, who is the new partnerships manager for Plant Powered Metro after a previous career training chefs for wellness in the schools in the NYC Department of Education. She has worked as a plant-based health supportive chef and a nutrition and culinary education manager. Chef Rebecca, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Chef Carol Levy, who I've had a great opportunity to work with in the past with Plant Power Metro New York, and I've used a lot of your recipes and learned so much through you. So such an honor to be able to introduce you. In your past, you were a plant-based nutrition through Plant Powered Metro's Jumpstart program in 2019. You have worked for top chefs in restaurants and bakeries, and you ran a cafe and a culinary job training program. You hope to inspire people to take chances in the kitchen, cooking without fear, and embracing more nutrient-dense foods. Chef Carol, welcome.
Thank you so much, and nice to see all of you.
So we've got a couple questions that we've come up with. I'll start with Chef Carol, if you'd like to begin, and then we'll go through the other chefs.
Okay.
The first question is a two-part question. It's what foods did you eat and love growing up, and how have your taste and preferences changed since you've taken on a healthy plant-based lifestyle?
Wow, that's a loaded, wow. Well, when I was growing up, I think I was a very fussy eater. I don't even think I liked my vegetables when I was a kid. I was raised by a grandmother and a mother, and my grandmother was an excellent cook, and she taught me how to cook. She taught me how to bake and cook. I was raised in a Jewish home, so we had a lot of traditional, we ate a lot of meat. But growing up, in my early or late 20s, I became a vegetarian, and I was a vegetarian for 25 years. And it wasn't until just a very few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, that I became a vegan. I never thought I could do it, honestly. I never, ever thought I could do it. And as you mentioned in the introduction, I worked in kitchens, and we used a lot of oil and we used a lot of salt, and I'm a baker, a trained baker, and I never thought that I could even make a dessert without butter. So things have really super changed for me. I'm also a Food for Life instructor, and I really feel good about where I'm at with my eating and my lifestyle now, and really try not to, I don't know, what would I say? Try not to knock people over the head with it. I just continue to cook and try to serve good food. And I don't preface it, oh, we're not having any sugar, salt, or oil. I just say, here's the food.
That's it. That's it.
That's it.
good food with good ingredients. That's kind of what I'm.
That's the best. And you know, the biggest thing for me, Anthony, is everyone says, "Oh, what do you eat?" You know, people say, "What do you eat?" And I'm like, I eat everything, everything under the sun practically. I feel like I eat more now than I ever did. And when I went from being a vegetarian to a vegan, I felt like I ate so much more vegetables and so many more grains and legumes, and it just really changed. I didn't realize how much I leaned on dairy when I was a vegetarian.
Of course.
So, and I don't know if I got your second part. What was the second part of your question?
The second part, you kind of said that you have your taste and preferences changed, and I think the dairy and moving out of vegetarian.
Yeah, you know, now when I'm hungry, Anthony, I mean, literally, when I am hungry, I want a salad. Like, I like the things that I crave are like healthy cravings. And that's what's so weird. Like, I still scratch my head about that. I think, why am I craving and I just want a plate of vegetables, or like, that's what I crave. So it has really changed, you know, that has definitely changed.
Yeah, it's interesting what your body needs now compared to what it did before with the cheese.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you, Chef. Chef Rebecca, again, I'll repeat that question. What foods did you eat and love growing up, and how have your tastes and preference changed since you've taken on a healthy plant-based lifestyle?
Yeah, I'd say pretty much whatever my parents put on the table. But luckily, my dad was a cook, so he knew how to make food tasty. My mom, on the other hand, she loved us. We had to eat, so she made food. But it was really what they were putting on the table. And I remember a couple situations, like being at school and wanting to get the cheesesteak across the street from the school, because I'm from Philly. But I had to go home for lunch. And then I remember another situation where I went to the mall and had a hot dog. And when I came home, my dad wanted me to eat hot dogs and beans. And so there were several situations where we fought over food, which definitely is something that we were talking about earlier, not to do with your kids. You know, a lot of my work in the last 10 years has been with children in schools, and you learn a lot about children related to food, even plant-based food. But growing up in my culture, we had a lot of vegetables. Unfortunately, like I said, in my mom's case, they were boiled, so they were kind of tasteless. And then other things, it was just too much added salt, sugar, and fat. So I like to continue eating the foods I grew up with without the added sugar, salt, and fat.
Yeah. I'm trying to do the same thing, trying to cook the ingredients that I grew up on and learning ways to sweeten them and have that savory without the salt and sugar. So
yeah, I want you to do it with pasta, Anthony. Okay? Because that's the thing that I always feel is hard for me to get when I go to restaurants. I want an amazing pasta dish that is plant-based, you know, doesn't have egg in the pasta. Is that even possible? I'll just leave that out there.
No, it definitely is. I'm gonna name that after you if we come up with one.
Okay, I'll be there to get it.
Chef Brandy, what foods did you eat and love growing up, and have your taste and preference changed since you've taken on a healthy plant-based lifestyle?
Growing up, I ate a lot of the same foods that I eat now. I've just kind of changed how we eat them. So I actually grew up in a family that ate a bunch of vegetables. My grandparents always grew things, and even though we followed the standard American diet, even on takeout days, my mom would force us to eat vegetables. It was weird to have like Popeye's chicken, French fries, and then my mom would make like string beans. So it was just this very interesting kind of focus on having some form of vegetable on the table. I will say that now I don't use the same things to season them. So like maybe those string beans were seasoned with like like smoked turkey neck, and like today they're seasoned with like smoked Chinese tea, which is like you still get the same flavor profile, but you're eliminating the meat. And the changes in the, I don't know if they've changed. Maybe they have changed from the process of expansion, because I like to just really find the stuff that I love to eat growing up and figure out how can we make it plant-based. So that's probably the way to answer that question.
Yeah, no, I think we all probably share that same style of cooking, of just trying to make it normal, and cooking great recipes with great ingredients, All right, well, thank you. So the second question, I'm going to start with Chef Rebecca this time. So we each have different cultural traditions that we lean on when we're creating healthy plant-based dishes. Can you give me one aspect of your culture or cultures that inspire you when you cook or develop recipes?
Well, flavor. I grew up on soul food, and soul food is just rich with flavor. So one of the things that I do is I try to layer the flavors by using a lot of herbs. And I even kind of don't want to say spicy, because when you say that, people think you mean hot, but it's not hot. But I definitely use a plethora of spices from many different cultures because I am layering those flavors. I try to use fresh herbs, but many times it's totally okay to use dried herbs. Sometimes people think you have to use fresh, but you don't. Dried is totally fine. And then there are some things, because I tend to lean towards savory and not sweet. I'm not a real sweet or pastry person. So, where I really try to shine is in the savory area. So I'll use things like nama shoyu. And so that is, a more pure soy sauce. It, hasn't been as processed, and that really is the main thing. And so I'll add that to it. But the main thing that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get pleasure out of my food, because my introduction to food was with my dad at 6 years old in the kitchen cooking. And he was a man who worked 2 jobs. So he wasn't home much. But when he was in that kitchen, and there was so much joy that is what I derive from cooking. And that's what I give to people. So no matter what I'm doing, it's layering those flavors, trying to chase that soul food in whatever way I can, and getting that pleasure and joy out of it.
That's beautiful. One follow-up question. I was wondering if the home cook was thinking, if a recipe called for fresh herbs and all you had was dry herbs, how do you change that up into the recipe? Yeah.
Well, we know that the dry herbs are going to be stronger.
Yeah.
So you're going to use less than you would if they were fresh.
Gotcha. Good. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's see. Second, let's go with Chef Carol. We have different cultural traditions that we lean on when we're creating healthy plant-based dishes. What's one aspect of your culture or cultures that inspires you when you cook or develop recipes?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I am Jewish by nature, and that is really my background. And I have really tried to reinvent a lot of our Jewish food, whether it's cooking latkes in the oven opposed to frying them in oil, eating challah that is not made with eggs and oil and sugar. Our traditions are heavy in eggs and sugar and oil. That is classic Judaism, Jewish food. It really is. I am a little bit Latin in my background, and I have to tell you, I really love Mexican food. That is really the food that is what I love the most. I also love Indian food, and why do I love these 2 foods the most is because of the spices and the kind of experimental things that you can do with, whether it's dried chilies and fresh chilies, or whether it's dried herbs and all the different kinds. And also I lean a lot on Middle Eastern food. That is my nature of cooking, is with a lot of fresh herbs. I've always cooked with a lot of fresh herbs, and so that all the taste is frontal in your mouth. So that's my answer.
Very good. Yeah, I love the spice also. My wife, when she cooks, adds a little spice to everything, and it's one of my favorite parts. So another thing we all share. Okay, Chef Brandy, we're going to go to the second question with you, and then we'll let you be the first one on the third question, third and final question. Then we're going to have a quick lightning round, and we'll move on to the next piece. So Chef Brandy, we have different culture traditions that we lean on when we're creating healthy plant-based dishes. What's one aspect of your culture that inspires you when you cook or develop recipes?
Yeah, I think when I think about my culture, I think about we're culture of people that make the best out of whatever we're given. I mean, even we think about the history of like soul food and how we were given the things that were left over to create like these really delicious dishes, not necessarily healthful, but definitely delicious. And so that really always is kind of in the back of my mind when I'm creating, like really thinking about creating dishes that even with like the simplest of ingredients, I love potatoes. So like the simplest of ingredients, what can we do with say one or two ingredients, and definitely exploring spice and exploring herbs to kind of just take this one ingredient and do a lot with it so that food doesn't seem like so much work. So that's definitely like when I think of what motivates me from a cultural perspective, it's really making the most out of all of the little bits. And I mean, another thing that I'm really big on is like not wasting things. So all of the things that we do consume, like we figure out different ways that we can give it back. We can turn like leftover pieces into broth. We can take leftover scraps of food and turn it into compost. So that's definitely one of my motivators when I'm pulling from culture to create food.
Nice. Okay, so we'll finish up with the third question. Chef Brandy, what is a common myth or objection you hear about cooking with whole plant foods, and how do you respond?
Yeah, okay. So one of the biggest things is that you're gonna eat and you're not gonna be full. And it's hard to pick one. I have to say it's gonna be hard to pick one, but I'm gonna cover collection and time altogether. So you're gonna eat and you're not gonna get full. And I guess so too. And it's not gonna have any flavor. Like that's the one thing that people are very, very concerned about. And the one thing that I always tell them is at the end of the day, okay, whatever the dish is, if it's meat, if it's pasta, if it's vegetables, the food itself doesn't have the flavor. It's up to the person preparing it to add the flavor to it, right? So if you take a whole chicken and dump it in a bowl of water, like boil it in a pot of water with no seasoning and pull it out and expect it to be delicious, you're going to be, sadly disappointed. And it's going to be the same thing with like vegetables. If you take them and put them into a pot of just boiling water, they're not going to be that tasty. So that's one thing that I always like to remind people: season your vegetables the same way that you would season your meat, because if it tastes good to you when you season your meat, it's going to taste good to you when you season your vegetables the same way. And the full thing, I mean, I don't know how people, like, I mean, maybe the myth is we've gotten over it, but like there's so much food that is filling. I mean, we're talking about beans, we're talking about potatoes, we're talking about different pastas and rices. And in addition to that, just the vegetables themselves, they're so full of so much water and fiber that just eating those like in themselves is going to fill you up. So that's definitely something that I get hit with a lot, and actually love rebutting it.
Yeah, no, it's a change of your thought process, because before I found whole food plant-based, I was a vegan and I was always hungry because I didn't know what to eat. And because of doctors like Dr. Greger and the Daily Dozen, I found out a new way of eating because the food pyramid no longer served me. So yeah, you definitely can get full if you know what you're doing. Chef Rebecca, I'm sure you've never had this come up, but what's a common myth or objection you hear about cooking with whole plant foods, and how do you respond?
Yeah, it's the same as Chef Brandy. My answer is usually like, do I look like somebody who's starving? And the answer is no. Okay, so that is my answer. And then definitely, the other is that I share my story, like I just shared with everybody, about growing up with a dad who grew up on a farm, who was eating soul food. That was my introduction to food. And now that I'm plant-based, I can't really get away from that. So I have to bring that to the food that I'm making. I think that raw food is really important because when I tell my story about how I became plant-based, which was I had a precancer diagnosis and I went raw vegan and everything changed. I lost weight, just everything. I can't even tell you, like skin, hair, whatever. People were stopping me on the streets. So that's important. But when it comes to cooking food, right? So you're making warm food or hot food. I really like to focus on what I was saying before, removing the salt, sugar, fat that we find in the standard American diet. And so I know that when I tell people my story, first, I'm add a little humor to it, like I just did. But when I tell them my story about knowing food, because a lot of times when you think about eating this way, it kind of goes back to, and no one should take offense. My sister was one. I'm a little younger than her, but like that hippie era where you were just eating like grains and greens, and there's nothing really being done to it, right? It's just being steamed, and they had names for that, and people used to make fun of me. My family used to make fun of me. Oh, you're eating like a rabbit, and so now when they see the food that I bring to like family events, sometimes they're eating my food and their food because of how it looks and tastes. So I try to just tell my story because I think that really helps.
Yeah, it's pretty convincing. Chef Carol,
I'm thinking still about what Rebecca says because I go to restaurants sometimes and I'm the only one at the table that orders the vegetables, right? And then I have to convince the waiter that I just want a plate full of vegetables from the kitchen, and then they come out and everybody wants my vegetables. The whole table wants my vegetables, and I'm like, those are mine. So, to your question, Anthony. There are two things that come to mind the most. People always ask me, but where do you get your protein? Where's that coming from? And again, back to the restaurant, I have to always laugh when it says, add a side of protein, add a side of protein. Well, if you're eating the vegetables and you're eating the beans and the grains and you're eating your nuts and your seeds, you know how much protein is in hemp seeds and chia seeds and flax, so much protein, So the protein, and how much protein, no one ever says, oh my God, you're deficient on protein. Nobody. Maybe if you live in some remote country, you're deficient on a little bit of protein, but it's never something that anyone ever says. You're missing your protein.
Yeah.
And then my second prong is that, as I said, I'm a baker by nature. I've been it since I was a child, literally. There's pictures of me cooking cakes when I was a little kid with my grandmother. And the fact that I can bake something and something actually comes out looking beautiful and delicious, and it doesn't have butter and it doesn't have sugar and it doesn't have salt, is still an amazing, a wonderment, and still a discovery for me each and every time. Even if I've made a recipe 5 times, the same thing, I'm still like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yeah. So, and I grew up on cornbread. I love cornbread so much that I grew up on the Jiffy mix. I swear I grew up on the Jiffy mix, but I love cornbread, and I love making it so much without the butter, the sugar, and the oil. It's so satisfying.
Yeah.
So, Chef, could I just say something a little serious here about what Chef Carol said about the protein? And I think we need a physician or a dietitian, but most Americans, based on how the food pyramid was, and we know what's behind it, are getting more protein than they ever would need. And it's actually negatively impacting health. And so that's not for this conversation, but that's something people should research and look into. So,
yeah, I know. Like you said, Yeah, it's music to my ears. I also believe that, and a doctor can tell us more about that. But all right, I think we went over, but I think we have time for this lightning round, and we got some fun 5 or 6 fun questions. I think the quickest way to do it is if I start with one chef and have just go down the line of the 5 questions and let you just come up with your 1 or 2 answer, and we'll go to the next chef and finish off. And let's see, who haven't we start with? Let's start with Chef Carol. Chef, real quick, a single word or a phrase. Here we go. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Your favorite kitchen tool?
Microplane.
Oh, nice. Your go-to seasonal ingredient?
Go to seasonal. Seasonal ingredient?
Yep.
I just got Romanesco. That's one of my favorite. I don't know if it's an ingredient. It's a vegetable, but it is my favorite.
It's an ingredient. How about your Thanksgiving entree last week?
Well, I just cooked on Chef AJ, and I made cabbage steaks with dukkha. So that's on my mind.
Wow, that sounds really good. All right. A dish or meal someone can make that doesn't require a chef's expertise?
Hummus.
All right, now we're going to get deep. What is one thing you do to keep a sense of positivity and purpose in today's challenging world?
I just try to be positive. I try to be as positive as possible and try to be happy.
That's all we can do. Thanks, Chef. All right, let's go to Chef Brandy. Ready?
Ready.
All right, here we go. Your favorite kitchen tool?
Oh, Chef Carol, you took the microplane away from me, so I'm gonna follow. That's my favorite kitchen tool. But I literally love a spoon. Like, I love the spoon. It has so many purposes.
Wow. All right.
You can stir and peel with it. I know it seems like a weird answer, but you can stir and peel with a spoon.
Yeah,
so
you definitely put some ginger with a spoon.
Yep.
All right, your go-to seasonal ingredient?
It has to be the squashes, maybe that squash.
Yeah, another great thing about Mother Nature giving you the squash in the winter months, huh? Yeah. Your Thanksgiving entree last week?
Candied yams, but roasted potatoes with date caramel instead of your traditional brown sugar.
Wow, sounds amazing. A dish or meal someone can make that doesn't require a chef's expertise?
I want to say like stovetop bread. So just like flour, water, let it sit, smash it, and then cook it on an open flame. Like, I do it all the time. I encourage people to do it, and there's no real recipe. You just feel it out, and it always comes out yummy.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm gonna have to get that tutorial from you. Well, what is one thing you do to keep a sense of positivity and purpose in today's challenging world?
I think staying curious and allowing people to be who they are. So meeting people where they are and staying curious is definitely my positivity, I guess, recipe.
Staying curious. I hear that. All right. You ready to finish this off, Chef Rebecca?
Let's go.
All right. Your favorite kitchen tool?
Favorite is not something I use a lot, but I'd have to say the mandolin. But my favorite that I do use a lot is a garlic press.
We don't use any garlic in my kitchen.
Garlic 24/7.
My dad eats it like an apple. Your go-to seasonal ingredient?
I have to go with summer season because I love berries, every kind, and stone fruit.
Yeah, amen to that. How about your Thanksgiving entree last week?
Okay, so I made a lentil loaf with mushroom gravy, stuffing in an acorn squash, and cranberry sauce.
Wow.
Yeah.
I actually saw a picture of that today. It looked amazing. I bet yours was delicious.
We eat it every day since Thursday.
Yeah, nice. I actually ate some leftovers today from our Thanksgiving. A dish or meal someone can make that doesn't require a chef's expertise?
Yeah, I feel like right now we're going through like this culinary transition in America, which is actually very positive. because we tend to eat a lot of junk food. But there's this thing about a bowl right now. Everything's a bowl, right? And so whether it's a salad bowl or a warm bowl or a rice bowl or a noodle bowl, and I think that that is something so easy to replicate at home because it's like a kitchen sink. Just get yourself some rice, put it on the bottom, or grain or some noodles, and throw some stuff on top, and you're good.
Yeah, amen to that. And it could be any kind of cuisine, from Asian to Italian to you just soy sauce, garlic. I mean, yeah. All right, here we go. Let's get deep one more time. What is one thing you do to keep a sense of positivity and purpose in today's challenging world?
Oh, this is actually an easy one. Work on my mindset. And so that is something that I put a lot of work in. You know, sometimes I can wake up in the morning and just have to just tell myself, you know, today is going to be a great day, you know, and when the world we live in now, we have to talk about it with all this stuff hitting us. Really, for me, it's just keeping my mind right.
Keep your mind right, be curious, and stay positive. I love it. This was such a pleasure to be surrounded by you wonderful, beautiful chefs, and I look forward to hopefully working and with you again, or just following.
Aren't you having a dinner tomorrow?
Yes, at the Bells.
Yes.
There's like 100 people coming. It's going to be a huge.
I know. So I will come. I told my friend about it. I actually signed up on the vegetarian and vegan meetup.
Yeah. It's man, what a great meetup. They started like 5 months ago with us, and it's grown from like 30 people to 60 people, now to 100. It's amazing. We have the space to have you all.
Can't wait to try your food.
Excited to see you tomorrow night. Thank you. Thanks, Leanna, for this opportunity.